The night clerk at Miller's gas station. The clock on the wall ticked 2:17 a.m., each second echoing like a drumbeat in the empty gas station. I had been working the night shift for 6 months, and in all that time, I thought I had seen it all. Drunks stumbling out of cars, lonely truckers talking to themselves, and the occasional desperate soul buying a pack of cigarettes just to get warm. But nothing had prepared me for the night when I realized some encounters are not meant to be explained. I was straightening the shelves behind the counter when I first noticed the man. He wasn't the usual type you see at night, a scraggly-haired figure in a long, tattered coat, pale skin almost glowing under the fluorescent lights. He didn't speak. He just stood there near the doorway, staring. At first, I thought he was a homeless man looking for change, so I tried to offer him some food from the small convenience selection. Can I get you something?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. He didn't answer. His eyes, dark and empty, felt like they were drilling into my soul. I tried to shake off the unease and went back to stocking chips, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Minutes passed. Then came the sound, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper from behind the counter. I froze, heart pounding. "Help." Me. I spun around, expecting some kid playing a prank, but the store was empty. The man hadn't moved. Panic rose in my chest. I reached for the phone to call the police, but the line was dead. Not unusual for the middle-of-nowhere town, but the timing made my stomach twist. I tried to distract myself, pretending to check inventory, but I kept catching glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye. Shadows flickered across the walls, even though the store was lit from end to end. And then, the cash register opened by itself. I heard coins clinking. I ran over, slammed it shut, and told myself I was imagining things. Hours dragged. By 4, a man had not moved, not a step, yet I felt like he was slowly inching closer every time I blinked. My nerves were shot. I considered calling my manager, but my phone had no signal, and the landline remained dead. That's when I heard the whisper again. "Don't leave." I froze, realizing my legs had been moving toward the door without me thinking. My throat went dry, and I tried to speak, but only a croak came out. I blinked, and he was right at the counter, face inches from mine. His skin was grayish, almost translucent, and his eyes weren't human. They were black voids. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. "What do you want?" I yelled, though my voice trembled. He raised a skeletal finger, pointing at the back storage room. Against every instinct, I followed, my feet heavy like lead. The door creaked open, revealing nothing but empty shelves and cardboard boxes. Relief surged until I felt the chill behind me. The man was no longer at the counter. I turned. He was standing in the shadows, closer than ever. The room felt impossibly cold, my breath visible in front of me. Then, as if the air itself had shifted, I heard a faint voice, not from him, but from the back office speaker. "Don't close the door." I froze. That was my voice. My own voice repeating what I had said moments ago. My hands shook, and when I tried to leave, the exit doors slammed shut on their own. Panic clawed at me. I ran behind the counter, trying to force the doors open, and then he whispered again, this time right in my ear. "Why are you still here?" I screamed. My vision blurred, and suddenly the lights went out, pitch black. I fumbled for the emergency flashlight, shaking, and when I clicked it on, the man was gone. Relief, and then the sound of coins clattering behind me. I turned slowly. The cash register was open. The money inside was gone. I left immediately at first light, never returning. Later, I learned that the gas station had a history. Years ago, a clerk had been killed during a robbery at exactly 2 a.m., and no one ever solved the case. Every night, locals whispered, the clerk's spirit returned, wandering the store, seeking revenge or warning. I never saw him again, But sometimes, when I drive past that station at night, I swear I see a shadow in the window, staring, waiting. Twist? Months later, I got a call from the station manager. The security footage from that night was missing. Except for one frame, a man in a tattered coat standing behind the counter. But my face was in the frame too, frozen, staring back. From inside the man's eyes. The diner that never slept. It was 1:45 a.m. when I walked into Millie's Diner for my first night shift. I had just moved to a new town and needed the job. The neon sign flickered faintly, buzzing like a restless mosquito, casting an eerie pink glow on the empty parking lot. The place smelled of fried grease and coffee that had been reheated one too many times. I wasn't expecting much. After all, it was a small town, and most of the regulars were long gone by midnight. But as soon as I stepped inside, I felt it, the kind of silence that wasn't peaceful, but heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. "Hello," I called, my voice echoing. No reply. The diner looked normal enough. Chrome tables, red vinyl booths, and a counter lined with stools. But something was off. All the menus were blank, except for one scribbled note that read, "Don't leave until the last one eats." I laughed nervously, thinking it was some employee prank. The only other sounds were the hum of the refrigerator and the soft ticking of the wall clock. I put my bag down behind the counter and started preparing coffee, trying to convince myself that I was imagining things. It wasn't long before the first customer arrived. The door jingled and a man shuffled in, hunched over, wearing a black hoodie. His face was shadowed, but his hands were pale and trembling. He slid onto a stool, and I could barely make out his voice. "Coffee, black." I poured it silently, trying not to stare. Something about him made my skin crawl. He didn't move much, just sat there, sipping slowly. I decided to keep busy, wiping tables, cleaning the counter. But every few minutes, I would glance back, and he hadn't moved an inch. Hours passed. Occasionally, other customers came in one by one, but each of them acted strangely. They never spoke, never made eye contact, and always left without paying. When I tried to follow them, they would vanish into the dark parking lot, as if swallowed by the night. By 3 a.m., I was exhausted, my nerves fraying. That's when the whispers began. At first, I thought it was the wind, but they grew louder, coming from the corners of the diner. "Don't leave, stay, eat." My hands shook as I reached for the counter phone to call my manager. Deadline. I checked my cell, no signal. My stomach turned cold. I realized I wasn't alone. The customers, those pale, silent figures, they weren't human. The man in the hoodie stood suddenly. His voice was raspy, almost a growl. "Have you eaten?" I shook my head. He smiled, or what I thought was a smile. Too wide, too sharp, stretching unnaturally. He gestured toward the back of the diner. I froze. My instincts screamed at me to run, but something held me in place. I moved slowly, following him to the storage room. Inside, I saw dozens of figures, hunched over tables, eating. But not food. Flesh, raw, bloody, human flesh. And then I saw it, my own reflection in the stainless steel freezer door. My face, pale and terrified, looking back at me. But someone else's hand, cold and skeletal, reaching toward me from behind my reflection. I ran. Out of the diner, into the freezing night. The door slammed behind me, and the neon sign flickered violently before going out completely. I stumbled to my car, heart hammering, and sped away. Weeks later, I tried to find Millie's Diner again. I drove to the address over and over. Nothing. Just an empty lot, weeds growing where the building should have been. I asked locals. Number. One remembered a diner ever existing there. The twist? A year later, I received a postcard in my mailbox. No return address. On it was a simple message, written in messy, dark red ink. "We hope you enjoyed your meal. The security guard who watched too closely. I never thought a night shift could feel like being trapped inside a horror movie. But that was before I took the job at the old corporate building downtown. I was young, desperate for extra cash, and naive enough to think that sitting behind a security desk would be easy. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. The building had been empty for months, save for a few cleaning staff who left by 10 p.m. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, and the hum of the security monitors filled the room. I checked each camera in order: the lobby, the elevators, the empty offices, the parking garage. Nothing unusual. Around 1:30 a.m., I heard a faint tapping, like fingernails against glass. I froze. The sound was coming from the lobby. I grabbed my flashlight and walked down the darkened hallway, the beam cutting through the shadows. The lobby was empty. No one. Just the revolving door slowly spinning in the wind, even though it was locked. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. Just the wind, I muttered. By 2 a.m., the unease had grown into full-blown fear. The monitors began acting up. Faces appeared where they shouldn't. A man standing in the elevator, staring at the camera. A shadow moving across the 5th-floor hallway, disappearing when I switched angles. Then I heard it on the radio. A whisper so faint I thought I was imagining it. "Don't leave." I spun around. Nothing. My pulse raced. I called the other security desk on the radio. No answer. Static. Then the tapping returned. Louder, closer, coming from the stairwell. I approached slowly, heart hammering. Each step I took felt like it echoed through the empty building. When I reached the stairwell, the door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. Nothing. Just the endless staircase, disappearing into darkness. I turned to leave and froze. Standing at the top of the stairs was a man in a dark uniform, same as mine. Same badge, but his face, it was blank, no eyes. Just smooth, featureless skin. My stomach dropped. I stumbled backward. Then he spoke, voice low, almost mechanical. "You shouldn't be here. This is our shift." Panic took over. I ran back to the security desk, trying to reach my car. Every hallway seemed to stretch endlessly, the doors shifting, leading me deeper into the building rather than out. I felt watched, every shadow moving unnaturally. Hours or maybe minutes later, I found myself back at the security desk. The monitors were off. My radio crackled. "Good job. You lasted the night." I looked up. The figure was there, sitting behind the desk now, smiling with a human-like face I couldn't recognize. The next morning, I quit. I packed my things and never returned. But I couldn't forget. Every time I close my eyes, I see those empty eyes staring, and I hear that whisper, "Next shift, it's yours." Weeks later, I read a news report. The building had been abandoned. For over a year, no employees, no security staff. But local teens swore they saw someone in uniform, walking the halls, always watching. And that's the thing, they all said the same words, whispered in the dark. "Don't leave. It's our shift now." The night librarian who never left. I thought working the night shift at the old city library would be perfect. No crowds, no interruptions, just me, rows of books, and a quiet building that smelled of dust, paper, and history. It was a dream for a bookworm like me. The pay wasn't great, but it didn't matter. I needed this job. From the moment I stepped inside, the library felt off. The towering shelves cast long, sharp shadows under the fluorescent lights, and the faint smell of mildew mixed with something metallic that I couldn't identify. My supervisor handed me a set of keys and a small radio, explaining that the day staff had gone home and it was up to me to patrol, organize, and ensure the library remained secure until morning. "No one's supposed to be here," he said, his voice unusually serious. "But some parts of the building, they're old. Just be careful." I laughed nervously. Old buildings creaked. That was normal. I pushed my anxiety aside and settled into the routine. The first night was quiet, almost unnervingly so. I wandered the stacks, organized returned books, and cataloged a few rare editions. Every now and then, a door would slam somewhere deep inside the library, and I'd jump, telling myself it was just the wind. But that first night, I noticed something strange in the rare book section. A book was open on a desk, as if someone had been reading it, but no one was there. The pages were filled with strange symbols, not letters, almost like an ancient language. I leaned closer, trying to decipher them, when I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around. Nothing, just the empty stacks. My heart raced, and I laughed at myself, shaking my head. "It's just the building settling," I whispered. The next week, the incidents increased. Books fell off shelves for no reason. Shadows moved along the walls just beyond my peripheral vision. Sometimes I'd hear whispers soft, barely audible, almost like someone reading aloud from the old forgotten volumes. I began to feel watched, the way someone stares at you when they think you can't see them. One night, around 2 a.m., I was shelving books in the history section when I saw a figure, hunched over a table in the rare books room, flipping through a leather-bound book. I froze, my mind raced. The figure was old-fashioned, wearing a uniform that looked like it belonged to a librarian from decades ago. Its face was hidden, and when I stepped closer, it vanished as though it had never been there. My hands trembled, and I almost dropped. The book I was holding got sleep-deprived and terrified. I began researching the library's history. The old archives mentioned a night librarian named Henry Whitaker, who had vanished mysteriously in 1947. Rumors said he was obsessed with the rare collection, and some believed he never left. That explained the whispers, the shadows, the inexplicable phenomena. I told myself it was nonsense, yet every night I felt him there, watching, waiting. The library itself seemed to change. Corridors I had walked dozens of times twisted and stretched, leading me to unfamiliar sections. Some doors I was sure I'd locked would be ajar the next night, revealing dark passageways I'd never seen. The rare books room became a focal point of my fear. Sometimes I'd find books I had never touched placed neatly on my desk, open to the same cryptic symbols. One night, I decided to stay late, to confront whatever was haunting the library. I carried a flashlight and walked cautiously to the rare book section. The figure was there again, hunched over the same ancient text. I called out, "Henry, are you?" The figure turned slowly. Its face was pale, hollow, almost skeletal. Yet eerily human, it whispered, "You shouldn't be here. This is our library." Fear paralyzed me, but curiosity forced me closer. The figure stepped aside, revealing a small alcove. Inside were hundreds of photographs, some decades old, others seemingly recent. They were of night librarians, men and women who had worked here at night, all smiling faintly, but their eyes were blacked out, scratched over. I realized with a sinking heart that I was looking at the fate of every night librarian who had disappeared. Panic consumed me. I ran back to my desk to grab the keys and radio, but the hallway had changed. Stacks had shifted. Doors led to walls. The fluorescent lights flickered, creating shadows that twisted and danced across the walls like living things. Every step I took echoed too loudly, and I felt the presence of someone or something following me. Then I saw him again, sitting in the chair behind my desk, Henry Whitaker. But this time, he was wearing my uniform. My stomach dropped. I tried to move, but my legs refused to obey. He smiled, a ghastly, knowing smile. His hollow eyes seemed to pierce through me. "Welcome," he whispered. "You're finally on time." Everything went black. When I woke, it was morning. The day staff had arrived, calling my name. I was gone. I wasn't anywhere in the library. But my uniform was there, neatly folded on the desk, and a badge had appeared with my name engraved on it, new, polished, as though waiting for me to claim it. The whispers began again, faintly. Next shift, I never returned. But sometimes, when I walk past the library at night, I see a figure in the windows, hunched over a desk, turning the pages of a book that should have been long forgotten. And I know, one day, it will be me. The warehouse that swallowed the night. I always thought warehouses were the most boring places in the world. Cold, empty shelves filled with boxes and forklifts, the kind of place where nothing ever happens. That was before I took the night shift. At the Eastfield Distribution Center. It was supposed to be easy money. My job was simple: walk the aisles, scan the barcodes, log shipments, and make sure no one wandered in. The pay was better than most, and I needed the cash. The only catch? The place was massive, an endless grid of shelves that seemed to stretch forever. On my first night, my supervisor, Rick, handed me a clipboard and flashlight. "Most of the crew hates night shifts," he said with a tired smirk. "But hey, it's quiet. Just don't go wandering too far. This place gets weird after midnight." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. The warehouse was dead silent, except for the occasional groan of metal beams and the hum of fluorescent lights. Rows upon rows of shelves towered above me, filled with boxes stacked so high I couldn't see the ceiling. Every aisle looked the same, and within minutes, I felt disoriented. I walked the perimeter, scanned a few pallets, and returned to the office. The night dragged on. Nothing happened. At 3 a.m., though, I heard it. A low humming sound, deep in the aisles. It reminded me of machinery, but no forklifts were running, and no workers were there. I followed it, flashlight shaking in my hand. The hum grew louder, vibrating in my chest. When I turned a corner, it stopped. Silence. I scanned the area, nothing but boxes. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just been there, watching. When I clocked out at 6 a.m., Rick asked if I'd seen anything unusual. I laughed it off, told him about the humming. He didn't laugh back. He just said, "Stay in the main aisles. If you get lost, you won't like what you find." By the third night, the warehouse felt different. The aisles seemed longer, stretching further than before. I walked for what felt like 10 minutes down one row, only to end up back where I started. My scanner flickered, glitching, marking shipments that weren't on my clipboard. Then I saw movement. A shadow slipping between crates. I called out, thinking maybe a worker had stayed late, but no one answered. When I rounded the corner, the aisle was empty, except for a box lying open on the ground. Inside were dozens of notebooks, old and weathered, their pages filled with frantic handwriting. The entries chilled me. "I can't find the exit. The aisles keep shifting. There are others here hiding. They're not workers. They're not human. The keeper comes when the lights go out. Don't let the lights go out." My heart pounded as I closed the notebook. A cold draft swept down the aisle, and the humming returned closer this time. I sprinted back to the office, slamming the door shut behind me. The lights flickered. For a split second, I saw a figure reflected in the glass window. Tall, thin, draped in shadows. Watching. But when I turned, nothing was there. By the end of the week, sleep-deprived and paranoid, I started keeping a journal myself. It felt like the aisles were alive, changing when I wasn't looking. I'd mark walls with chalk, only to find the marks gone the next time I passed. One night, I lost track of time. The hum began again, louder, accompanied by whispers. I followed the sound until I reached the far back of the warehouse, a section I hadn't seen before. There was a door there, rusted, old, with no handle. Above it, scratched into the metal, were the words, "Keeper's Room." The hum grew deafening. My flashlight flickered. I stepped back, heart racing. The door creaked open on its own. Inside, I glimpsed shapes, pale figures crouched around something massive, chanting in low, guttural tones. I ran, but no matter which way I turned, the aisles kept leading me back to the door. The shadows stretched toward me. My flashlight died, plunging me into darkness. And that's when I heard a voice, low and rasping, right behind me. "You've stayed too long." I woke up in the office hours later, head throbbing, uniform drenched in sweat. My clipboard was gone. My flashlight was shattered on the desk. The warehouse was silent again. When Rick came in for the morning shift, I told him what I'd seen. He just stared at me, expression flat, before muttering, "That's how it starts." I quit the next day, but a month later, I received a package at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a single notebook, the same kind I'd found in that box. On the first page, in shaky handwriting, was a single sentence. "The warehouse keeper doesn't let anyone quit." The last page wasn't empty. It had a new entry, today's date. And it wasn't in my handwriting. It read, "Next shift, 2 a.m. See you soon."